Electro. Max Dillon spent most of his life feeling like he didn't exist. As an electrical lineman, he worked hard but never received thanks, recognition, or even basic respect. He wanted to be seen so badly that even the smallest compliment felt like a miracle. Everything changed the day a freak accident turned him into a living lightning bolt, a man who could bend electricity at will. For the first time, Max wasn't invisible. He lit up the world around him, literally. But the real transformation wasn't the power. It was the sudden and intoxicating surge of attention. People noticed him, not as Max, but as something extraordinary. And once he got a taste of that spotlight, he refused to give it up. The problem was that he didn't understand the difference between admiration and fear. So when people panicked and Spider-Man stepped in, Max twisted that into betrayal. To him, Spider-Man wasn't a hero. He was someone stealing the attention Max believed he finally deserved. What makes Max's motives feel so small isn't his power, but the reason he uses it. He isn't chasing domination, wealth, or revenge against society. He's chasing validation. Every reckless blast, every moment of chaos is him screaming, "Look at me, don't turn away." Deep down, all the destruction comes from a painfully human place. He's terrified of slipping back into the shadows. Beneath the crackling electricity is a lonely man who just wants the world to acknowledge that he exists. The Riddler. Edward Nygma grew up defining himself through intellect because it was the only thing he had. Riddles became the armor he wore against a world that mockingly told him he'd never be special. As he got older, he sharpened his mind into a weapon and believed Gotham would celebrate him for it. But the city didn't care. Nobody lined up to honor his cleverness. The brilliance he treasured most became something others found annoying or pretentious. So he crafted a new persona, one Gotham would have no choice but to pay attention to. What drives Edward isn't hatred or greed, it's insecurity wrapped in arrogance. He builds crimes like puzzles, not to confuse Batman, but to affirm his own genius. Every riddle is a test, every clue a performance, all designed to force the world to play the intellectual game he believes he's already won. And when Batman solves those riddles with ease, Edward doesn't react with respect. He reacts with wounded pride. That's why he escalates. That's why he keeps returning even after defeat. For all his intelligence, he's trapped in a cycle he doesn't know how to escape. He needs Gotham to admit he's extraordinary, and he needs Batman to fail, not because of some grand scheme, but because it's the only way he can validate his existence. His entire criminal identity is built around a fragile ego trying desperately to avoid the truth that maybe, just maybe, he's not the genius he imagined.
The Mandarin. Once born into nobility, the Mandarin grew up believing he was destined for greatness. His world collapsed when he lost everything: his wealth, his family honor, and the respect that came with his legacy. Stripped of all external power, he forged himself into a formidable warrior through pain, discipline, and an obsession with reclaiming the prestige he believed was stolen. When he discovered the 10 alien rings, he didn't just gain power, he gained a way to rewrite the narrative of his life. But beneath that cosmic strength lies a deep sense of wounded pride. The Mandarin isn't trying to conquer the world purely for control, he's trying to prove he's still the man he was supposed to be. Every plan he orchestrates, every battle he picks with Iron Man is woven with that resentment. Iron Man becomes the physical embodiment of everything he hates: modernity, progress, and a world that moved on without him. Stark is the self-made man who earned his power. The Mandarin is the dispossessed heir trying to reclaim his. What makes his motives so strangely small is this: with the rings, he could fight for anything: justice, power, unity, but instead he fights for pride. His villainy feels like a rebellion against a world that refused to give him back the privilege he lost. It's cosmic warfare fueled by bitterness. Black Manta. David Hyde was shaped by a hard and unforgiving childhood, one where he learned early that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. The one person he clung to was his father, the only anchor in a world that constantly tried to swallow him whole. Losing him, whether by Aquaman's direct action or his failure to intervene, didn't just break Hyde, it rewired him. His grief fused with rage, and he built a new identity from that pain. The suit, the weapons, the underwater empire, those weren't tools of ambition. They were tools of vengeance. Manta's world compresses into a narrow tunnel the moment his father dies. Aquaman stops being a hero or king, he becomes a symbol, a reminder of the loss Hyde can't process. Instead of confronting that grief, he feeds it. Each attack on Aquaman is less about strategy and more about trying to relive that moment in a way that gives him control. Manta's motives feel small, not because the emotion is small, but because he funnels every ounce of brilliance, every invention, every second of his life into one purpose, making one man hurt the way he hurts. The ocean is vast, but his focus has shrunk down to a single target. His life isn't about power or fear or dominance. It's about trying to outrun grief he never learned.
Reverse Flash. Eobard Thawne grew up idolizing the Flash the way people worship legends. He studied Barry's every move, every heroic act, hoping to one day stand beside him. He pushed his body and mind to replicate the accident that created the Scarlet Speedster. When he finally succeeded, he believed he was destined to become a hero too. Everything in his life pointed toward that dream, until he traveled back in time and discovered the truth. He wasn't Barry's partner, protege, or friend. He was his nemesis. That discovery shattered him more profoundly than any physical injury could. He didn't just lose his dream, he lost his identity. Barry Allen became proof that destiny had betrayed him. And instead of accepting that fate or carving a new one, Eobard tried to rewrite the narrative by force. He runs through time altering moments, sabotaging events, injuring the people Barry loves, all to satisfy a personal storyline he refuses to let go of. The pettiness doesn't come from his hatred, it comes from why he hates Barry. He hates him for not loving him back. He hates him for being the hero he wanted to be. Thawne has the power to rewrite entire timelines, but he uses it to settle emotional scores that started as disappointment. The Speed Force made him fast, but emotionally, he's stuck at the moment his dreams collapsed. Lex Luthor is, without question, one of the sharpest minds the DC Universe has ever produced. He built an empire from the ground up, shaping Metropolis with his innovations and influence. In his mind, he was humanity's peak, a symbol of what human ambition could achieve without relying on gods or miracles. Then Superman arrived, and everything Lex built suddenly felt small. A being from another world, stronger, admired, invincible, outshined him without even trying. Lex's conflict with Superman comes from a deep, festering resentment. He sees Superman as a threat not just to humanity's independence, but to his own legacy. If the world can look to a godlike figure, then what's the point of human excellence? More specifically, what's the point of Lex Luthor? Behind all his speeches about alien intervention and human freedom lies something far simpler: envy. The lameness isn't in Lex's intellect, but in the emotional root of his crusade. He could use his genius to solve world hunger or end wars. Instead, he uses it to tear down a man who makes him feel inferior. Lex doesn't want to save humanity, he wants to save his ego. And that smallness is what turns a brilliant man into a villain.
Mojo. Mojo comes from a dimension where entertainment is everything, and power is measured not by armies or wealth, but by viewer engagement. Lacking physical strength and mobility, he learned early to manipulate others to maintain control. When he discovered Earth's heroes, especially the X-Men, he saw them not as people, but as potential stars of the biggest show ever made. With cameras, traps, forced drama, and mind control technology, Mojo built an empire fueled entirely by spectacle. But beneath the absurdity lies a surprisingly pathetic drive. Mojo isn't trying to conquer Earth for strategic value, he's terrified of being irrelevant. He produces chaos, danger, and suffering with the same desperation as a failing TV producer chasing ratings. every elaborate death trap is less about killing heroes and more about keeping the audience entertained. His motives feel tiny because, at their heart, they are. He's a tyrant who fears being forgotten more than being defeated. His villainy isn't born from ideology or ambition, it's born from insecurity. The X-Men aren't fighting a conqueror, they're fighting a desperate showrunner who can't stand the idea of cancellation. Calendar Man. Julian Day never truly found an identity strong enough to ground him. Dates, holidays, and cycles became the structure he clung to. Instead of building a legacy through accomplishment, he built one through symbolism. Every crime he commits ties back to a calendar date, not because it gives him an advantage, but because it makes him feel connected to something larger: patterns, traditions, meaning. The truth is, Julian isn't dangerous because of his brilliance. He's dangerous because of his emptiness. The dates give him purpose when he can't find any internally. He dresses up his crimes as cultural reflections or poetic statements, but ultimately he's trying to give his life a sense of order it never had. Batman sees through him easily, predicting his crimes with a simple glance at the calendar. That predictability is what makes his motives feel so small. Julian tries to elevate himself with symbolism, but in the end, he's just a man who found his identity in numbers and never learned how to be anything